We are honored to be here this evening with you. Our program is simple. We're going to have Bob Schaefer, one of our board members who's a political consultant and an analyst of especially taking a look at what's happening in the state of Florida. He's going to share with us a little bit of those current bills that are of concern to us in protecting democracy. And then we will see a video of Indera Demine being interviewed last week, impressive immigration attorney. And then we will have time for Q&A. Indira's comments are about 35 minutes long. Just to share with you, we've got some upcoming programs, a couple of them, as with Indira's, in partnership with the League of Women Voters of Sanibel. One on February the 11th that we'll be showing called Trump 2.0, The Unmaking of America, with former Deputy Solicitor General of the United States and counsel to the Watergate Special Prosecutor and a past president of the District of Columbia Bar. He has decades of experience in public service and constitutional law. Mr. Lacovara will offer insight into the legal and institutional implications at this very moment and what they mean for our democracy. And then in March, a date to be determined, we'll also have a program on freedom of the press today with a really impressive three-person panel. And also on March the 28th, which is a Saturday, we'll be live streaming a program from Venice with the Social Justice Alliance of Florida Suncoast called Save Democracy Day. And they have also an impressive national global speaker who has Florida connections, and she will be making a great presentation that day. And we'll also be recording that for future use. And then I wanted to share with you that we have a wonderful matching donor gift to help keep these programs going. A $25,000 gift has been given to us, and we just need to raise money to match it in order to earn that special gift. So with that, my honor to introduce to you Bob Schaefer, who has, for those of you who have been following us for years, Bob is an expert nationally on political issues and has devoted his life to this. And he's also helping us out to understand what's happening in the big city of Tallahassee on behalf of the citizens of the state of Florida. With that, Bob Schaefer.
Thank you, Jim and Karen. And welcome to all of you. Before I get started talking about legislation in Florida, I want to briefly address a topic that's on all of our minds, and that's what's happened in Minnesota and across the country and what people like us can do to have any influence on it. The state murders of Renee Good and Alex Pretty are overwhelming. It's something that's never happened in this country before, and people are looking for ways to have some influence on making some good policy out of that. And I've been in touch with folks nationally. Just wanted to say that for folks on this call, there is something you can do. If you can make a call in the next 24 hours to our two U.S. senators, Rick Scott and Ashley Moody. You can reach them through the Senate switchboard at 202-224-3121. In the next, by the end of this week, they have to deal with legislation around the budget, which will include funding for ICE and other immigration enforcement. There's a national strategy coming together to not let that bill pass unless there are significant changes in the behavior of the administration's immigration program. And if you can reach out to Senator Scott Moody, with a real simple message that they should not vote for any funding for ICE unless there's agreement that there'll be no arrests without legitimate warrants, that agents must show IDs and not wear masks, that ICE stays out of churches and schools, and that Homeland Security cooperates with state investigators, including when one of their staff misbehaves. It's not perfect. It won't bring back people whose lives have been taken, but it may make for a better policy going forward. So please take that opportunity to let your federal representatives know what we want to have done. As for Tallahassee, we've done these ever since the beginning of Floridians for Democracy. We've done programs of identifying some of the worst bills that are before that state legislature, our state legislature, and encouraging people to take action against them, to let their state senators and representatives know that we're opposed to that. And our track record has been surprisingly good, not at getting decent bills passed by Tallahassee, but by stopping at least the worst of the worst over the years. 2026 turns out to be no different. Many of the old bills that were knocked down in 25 and 24 are up again. There's some other bad ideas, and I've gone through with guidance of some of our allies in groups like Equality Florida and Florida Now and the Giffords Group and Progress Florida, on whose board I sit, to identify a few of the worst bills. I'm sure there are others who are equally bad, and we'll hear about them in the future. I want to note here that if you really want to work on rolling back the bills, on Saturday, February 7th, the Floridians for Democracy will hold a postcarding session at the Fine Mark Bank headquarters in Fort Myers at the intersection of College Parkway and Winkler to do postcarding. We've done this in the last couple of years, sent close to 1,000 postcards, and had real good track record of targeting bills and targeting legislators to stop bad ideas. There's a lot of powerful legislators in our region in Southwest Florida and across the state, and when they hear from constituents, sometimes they listen and act. But in terms of what's been filed in the hopper, there's a lot of absolute garbage stuff that is pandering to the worst MAGA impulses, and bills that are just designed to throw red meat to the constituents. Here's some of the worst of them, and you might want to, if you see one that you particularly dislike, take note of it and let your own legislators know that you're opposed to it. The first, I have both the House and Senate bill numbers, effectively outlaws support of activism. This proposal creates a new category of domestic terrorist organization under Florida law, and those will be any organization that wants to influence government policy by intimidation or coercion, whatever that is. One could say that MAGA meets that standard. Moms for Liberty may meet that standard, but my guess is if they pass such a law, they'll say that groups like Floridians for Democracy meet the standard. And they create penalties under state law for donating, advocating, or supporting those kinds of organizations. I mean, a clear amendment of a clear violation of a variety of First Amendment protections. That's not bad enough. The next bill, HB 1071, would stop funds for activism education, whatever that is, in public schools. It appears to be anything that would involve students getting involved in social or political activities, like having an internship with a group like Floridians for Democracy, or maybe even the League of Women Voters. And that would, the Senate version of the bill would also limit sex ed to opt-in only, that only if parents said their children could take sex ed, they participate. And I guess that's another definition of activism from the right-wing perspective. And if that doesn't go far enough, HB 1119 would expand the Florida's already quite restrictive book bans, which allow individuals to identify and have pulled out of libraries and classrooms specific books. This bill would make it much easier to target and remove materials that are, quote, harmful for minors. It's defined vaguely in the new proposal as nudity, sexual conduct, or sexual excitement, whatever they are, as defined by not suitable for general audiences. Who are the general audiences? Well, you can guess who they have in mind and what kind of books they would be banning. HB 1001 would bar local government diversity plans, stop actions that in any way take recognition of differences that along the lines of sex, race, gender, sexual preference, etc. You know that something like this would be used for would be to go after local governments that, for example, declare Pride Day or maybe even Women's Day. And this bill would allow the state to arbitrarily remove from office duly elected local officials who violate the laws by believing in by taking actions that the folks in Tallahassee think promote diversity. The list gets worse. HB 289 would create legal rights for the unborn, extending to embryos and fertilized eggs the same legal rights as living children. This would invite lawsuits not just around abortion, but around in vitro fertilization if all zygotes are not brought to life. Perhaps around chemotherapy, since chemotherapy could conceivably kill fertilized eggs, etc. Absolute lunatics proposals to create legal rights for the unborn. In terms of the already born and protecting them, HB 917 would eliminate any requirements in state law for children to be vaccinated or have health exams before they enter public schools. The measles outbreak in South Carolina apparently is not a sufficient warning that we want to better that here and make Florida #1 in pandemics by eliminating vaccine requirements and leaving it totally up to parents without any reason. There are now some religious exemptions in the law that if they don't feel like they want to, they don't have to vaccinate or have health exam for their children. HB 173 would further limit what doctors can do in terms of dealing with minors, in terms of sexually transmitted diseases or pregnancy without parental permission, and essentially making it a crime for a medical professional to help a child in such a situation without parental permission. HB 663, you wonder where they get these ideas. They go from nuttier to crazy. This would create essentially a bounty system, allowing individuals to file lawsuits against women who they believe have ordered abortion drugs by mail or by telehealth, cross state lines to get an abortion, and the law would allow for up to $100,000 in bounty payments and legal fees to those who report these women who've transgressed the state's abortion laws. HB 133, one of the very few good things the Florida legislature has done in recent years is after the Parkland School massacre, raise the age for purchasing long guns, rifles and shotguns from 18 to 21. This proposal would reverse that and make it possible for teenagers, 18-year-olds, to buy and possess long guns under the law. The data show that though this population, 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, as about 4% of the population, they commit about 17% of all homicides. And the idea that making it easier for teenagers, young adults, to get their hands on these guns is contradictory to good logic. And finally, in the crazy category, is a proposal for a constitutional amendment, HJR, House Joint Resolution 583, would promote public prayer in schools by authorizing the use of school loudspeakers for prayer, there's no specification of which religion, but you can guess which religions would be favored during school days, and to create a official moment of silence or minutes of silence during the school program, during the school day, so people can continue praying to I guess the God of their choice. Though social pressure might limit that. All of these are on the agenda and live in Tallahassee right now. And these are not just there to be red meat. For example, the Children's Sexual Health Bill, the one barring physicians, that bill was reported out of committee in the House by a 19-7 vote yesterday. So these are all bills that are live and moving forward in Tallahassee, and bills that we need to get together to stop. So if take your notes on the screen and on one on the screen, and join us in two ways to make your concerns heard. Join us on Saturday, February 7th, to postcard to legislators about to stop these bad bills. And we'll have perhaps a couple good ones that we can support at the Feinmark Bank Community Room at College Parkway and Winkler in Fort Myers. In the meantime, please communicate with your state representatives to oppose these bad bills, either by citing the bad ones that you want stopped or just delivering the basic message that instead of throwing red meat to the most conservative elements of their constituencies, they instead need to be following the basic precepts of good government by protecting democracy, honoring the Constitution, and respecting human rights. With our pressure, we can't stop everything bad in Tallahassee, but we can make sure that the worst of the worst are blocked. Please join us and take action today and with us on Saturday, February 7th. Thank you.
Wow. Wonderful, Bob. Thank you so much. Impressive, sad, scary, sick, wrong, but thank you for speaking up and sharing with us. For those of you who are interested, you will be getting a communication about this within the next couple of days from Floridians for Democracy, Monday at the latest, but maybe even by Friday. In addition, on Saturday, February 7th, if you're in town, you're certainly welcome to join us. Bob will be there, and we will help you to score lots and lots of postcards sharing these important messages to our legislators. We also want to encourage people, if you see something positive, send them a note or leave a phone call. It's rare, but there are brave people standing up and speaking up to try to avert so many of these terrible things at the national level and at the state level. Florida is a leader in the free state. In Southwest Florida, where many of us are from, we just saw that Collier County is #1 and Lee County is #2 on arrests, on immigrant arrests. And with that, we have this wonderful program to share with you this evening. We will have Indera Demine speaking and sharing with us. I want to get my screen share here. Let's see, what do I need to do? I got it somewhere. I knew this was going to happen. There we go. I think I got it. There it is. Okay, and of course our phone's ringing at the same moment. Let me stop this and tell you, in partnership with the League of Women Voters, we've been able to bring to you a few great educational programs. Last week, Indera Demine, who's a naturalized U.S. citizen with firsthand experience navigating the immigration system, bringing personal insight and compassion to client representation. For over a decade of experience handling a wide range of immigration matters, including investor and work visas, family petitions, naturalization, immigration court proceedings, appeals, consular processing, waivers, etc. Indera has been doing so much. She's a special lady who has been speaking up and speaking out on behalf of immigrants in this country. Here she goes.
What I think is happening is there's a lack of humanity where immigrants are just not seen as people. Because if you don't see them as people, then they have no rights, right? And they have no connection and family and feelings and all of this. And so I think there's just a lack of humanity. There is a treating of immigrants as less than people. Because the way my clients, and these are people I'm seeing on a day-to-day basis, are being treated, it's as if, and it's not just them, because they're connected to our communities. They have employers, they have children, they have wives, husbands. And so it's impacting not just them, but everybody else is connected to them. But if you don't see them as a person, then they have no rights, then there's nothing that you have to honor, right? And so I think it's just the, again, chipping away of their humanity.
Thank you. So from your perspective, if you look at the what's going on in the rest of the U.S., predominantly in northern states, there was Operation Midway Blitz that is still underway. There's the operation in Minnesota, whose name currently escapes me. Portland. There was an official. Right. You don't hear any of that in Florida. Do you see, just based on what you've seen in the papers and such, are the same things happening in Florida that are happening elsewhere? It's just not being publicized?
Absolutely. 100%. In fact, when I got your question, I looked it up because I was certain we had some operation in place, and we do, Operation Tidal Wave, which local law enforcement cooperates with ICE and the FBI and DA, and so federal agencies. But absolutely, and the difference is our state government cooperates, right? And so we have a state government that is passing immigration laws, and in the process of passing additional immigration laws. In fact, yesterday we have a removal defense attorney, so she handles folks who are in detention centers, in court proceedings, and she just handles court proceeding cases. She's from Haiti, and her husband is from Haiti, and he was a doctor in Haiti, and he entered the United States under the parole program, and they're married, so she sponsored him, and so he has a pathway to lawful status. Well, the government, he was scheduled for an interview in November. The U.S. government has paused the grant of legal status, and that's green card, work permits, family petitions, and for folks from 39 high-risk countries. And we're not sure what that, we don't know how long the pause is going to be in place. We're not sure what that means. And so so a week before his scheduled interview, she got a notice his interview is canceled. This is someone who's our associate attorney. She represents folks that are facing deportation. Here she is, like, worried about her husband. All of a sudden, his interview for his green card is canceled. And so I reach out to the field office director where his interview is supposed to take place, just as a favor. And I said, look, she is an attorney. She is, he has great moral character. He's a doctor. He's just like, can you tell us, are you going to reschedule his interview? Can you tell us when, how long? Can you give us some answer? Because they have paused everything. So he's not going to get a work permit. Can't work. He's not going to get his green card. We're not sure how long. He's in this limbo status. And the field office director got back to me and said, please check your case status online. Basically, just say, I'm not going to say anything to you, answer. But I bring that up because she spoke to the public defender here at the 20th Judicial Circuit a couple of days ago, and the public defender told her, you need to get out. You need to get out of the United States. You need to take your husband and go somewhere else, because what is coming down in the state of Florida, and she didn't go into details, but basically what she's saying is your husband is at risk, and what's coming down doesn't look good. So you need to figure out another country to go to. And this is her former boss. Our attorney, our removal defense attorney, was a public defender. So this is her former boss basically saying, it doesn't look good for the state of Florida. And when Emma met with her, what we're trying to figure out is it legal when the police stops a vehicle that they can then arrest the person in the vehicle who has broken no laws? What is our recourse? And the public defender basically said, yes, there's a case law that came out. And so we don't hear a whole lot about Florida in the news because there's not a whole lot of opposition to immigration enforcement in Florida, right? But it's happening. It is happening in our state government where case laws are affecting immigration, right? And so if local state case law says you can ask for ID for folks in the vehicle if you stop a vehicle and then you figure out they have no legal status and you take them into immigration custody, that directly impacts immigration, right? So we're seeing state law directly impact immigration. SB 1718, a couple of years ago, that employers have to do e-verify and so on. So absolutely it's happening. We're just not hearing about it.
A question for you. I know that police obviously have the right to stop a car and I mean, they need some level of probable cause, could just be the tail lights out.
Yeah.
Can ICE do that? Can ICE independently do that?
So we're not can they do that?
I mean, they're doing it, but anyhow, can they?
So my understanding is that they can. And there's what they cannot do is enter into someone's home unless they have a warrant to do that. But if you're on the public road, if you're in a Greyhound bus, if you're on the street, if you're in any public vicinity, absolutely they can do that. You may have, let's say, you're in a vehicle and they arrest, the person driving the vehicle and you're just a passenger in the vehicle. You may have a motion to suppress if you're taken into immigration custody. But at the end of the day, if you're out of status, you're out of status. It doesn't, it's a moot point. Not like criminal court with, if you file a motion to suppress and there's drugs in the vehicle, the drugs are suppressed, right? If you file a motion to suppress an immigration court, it does nothing, right? And so what we're seeing, because there's not a whole lot of recourse, we're seeing stops where there's absolutely no reason for the stop. And we're seeing these incidents where our clients have done, there's been no violation of the law and still taken into custody, right? And so especially on Palm Beach Boulevard, in places where immigrants congregate, right? And so, and there isn't a reason. You're not violating a law, but you look like an immigrant.
Is that the so-called Panama stop?
That is exactly. And so because of that, I've had conversations with my own family members who, because what we're seeing is the position is arrest first, ask questions later. We'll arrest you first and then figure out if you're legal second, right? And so I've had conversations with my own family, my brothers and my dad who are brown like me. And I've said, you need to have a copy of your passport in your wallet. You need to not freak out, like all of these things, because what you're finding is folks will be detained for a period of weeks and then charges are dropped, right? Because there are no charges to charge, and charges are dropped. But do you want your family member to sit in a detention center for a couple of weeks? And that's happening all over. And, that's one of the questions you would ask is, are U.S. citizens being kind of caught in this whole thing? Absolutely. In fact, very early on in this administration, before it became such a thing where in other states they're going in and arresting U.S. citizens, I had a case like that in Florida. And I want to say this is back in like January of last year, very early on, where I had someone call me for a consultation that their family member, U.S. citizen, had an ICE hold. And an ICE hold is ICE is going to take you into custody if you're done with your probation or your criminal charge, whatever it is. And this is a U.S. citizen. And I had never seen anything like this before. So my initial response was, That's not true at all. They're not a US citizen. What are you talking about? That's never happened in my 13-year career. So I thought for sure that's not true. And it was. This person had an ICE hold because he had become a US citizen through his parents. So when he was under the age of 18, his mom or his dad naturalized and became a US citizen. And the law says that if you become a naturalized citizen, your child can automatically become a citizen under you if your child is under the age of 18. So his family had applied for a US passport and he was granted a US passport. But because it was automatic citizenship through parent, it's quite possible that it wasn't reflecting in the immigration court system. I don't know. But he had this ICE hold. Now, luckily, I was able to email local ICE and they removed the ICE hold. But yes, that happens. That's
Thanks. So I'm going to start bringing in some of the questions from the audience. Is there any discernible difference between an immigration detention center like Alligator Alcatraz and a prison?
I would say that a lot of times folks would rather be in like the local jail, Fort Myers jail, Naples jail, versus going to a detention center. Detention centers, it is extremely difficult to get a hold of your clients, figure out how to schedule a hearing with them, especially because folks are being moved all over, and so you may be detained in Fort Myers and end up in Arizona or Colorado and so on. So it's not as if I can go visit them in person. So I'm relying on this technology, phone call, video call. And like I said, I had two phone calls scheduled last week, both canceled. And so it's a lot more difficult to communicate with folks in custody. And from what I'm hearing from their experience, it's awful. It's certainly not a civil detention.
Yeah, which is consistent with what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And what you hear from the Sunday evening events at Alligator Outlet. Here we go. Back to somebody being detained, who and then released.
Yeah.
No arrested, no charges. When someone is detained, are you ever seeing them coming back, or are they just up there and gone?
Recently, I've been very careful about taking detained cases because, to be quite honest with you, it takes a toll on your mental health. Every single time you got to talk to the family member, have these difficult conversations. And so I've been very picky with the detained cases I'm taking. Recently, so for the longest time, we weren't taking detained cases because they weren't qualifying for bond. So I'm not going to take your case and then not get you bond. But then this district court case came out that says they qualify for bond. So I thought, on a case-by-case basis, that the facts are good. You've been here for 10, 15 years. If you have a lot of favorable factors, we'll take those cases. Since that district court decision, I haven't been able to get someone out of bond yet. Now we're working on it. So I have like 4 or 5 people that I want to file motions for bond and have a hearing on bond, but because they're not filed correctly, I can't get them out on bond. Now, earlier this year, before the change in bond proceedings, yes, I was still getting folks out on bond. They were being transferred all over. And so I had someone arrested in Fort Myers, and he was transferred over. I can't remember where at first, and filed a motion for bond. This is when the system was working and allowing you to file a motion for bond. Then he got transferred over to somewhere else. And so, and I actually had an immigration conference. It was over the summer. I remember because the conference is in Colorado, my office is in Fort Myers, and he is in I want to say Arizona. It was 3 different time zones. And so I need to do this bond hearing from my hotel room, from the immigration conference, trying to figure out which zone we're in to get him released. And, luckily I was able to get him bond. So over the last year, from January 2025 to now January 2026, certainly seen a decline in being able to get folks out on bond, right? But yeah, earlier this year or last year, I should say, they were still being moved around and so on, but we were getting them out.
So, I should have started with what was said at the end of the card, which is thank you for all.
Thank you.
And we should be saying that with each one. If someone is taken by mistake,
yeah,
and they experience harm, they're roughed up, they're beat up, do they have any recourse?
This goes outside of my realm of immigration. I only deal with, so I don't do like federal litigation work. And legally, you could file a lawsuit, a federal lawsuit. What I'm being told by my colleagues that do federal litigation work is that immigration officers have immunity. And so your recourse can only go so far because of that immunity in place. In fact, the public defender that met with Emma said the same thing to Emma, that they have immunity, Emma. So you don't want to find yourself in a situation where your husband, our associate attorney, where your husband's taken into custody and he's roughed up, and he's beat up, and now you have no recourse because they have federal immunity. So.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about your clients, for the immigrants themselves. And what are the changes impacting our employers in the area?
So I have done what I've seen, and over the years, employers would reach out to us and say, I have this employee and I really want to help him, and I have that employee, I want to help him, so that's not new. The pathways to legal status are very restrictive. And that's the thing, I think there's not a whole lot of information surrounding that. And so a lot of times most of the time, I should say, I get an employer who can't do anything, right? And so they want to do something, they can't do anything. So some of the things that I've done this year is I've gone out to place of employments. Like I went out to, I can't remember where, but it was like a resort, sort of like this one we're in, where they hire a large number of immigrants. And so I've done speaking engagement, know your rights things, and I've gone out to construction employers out in Lehigh and met with their employees one-on-one. I am finding more and more that employers want to cover legal fees and so on. But as far as what they can do, not a whole lot, and so pathways to legal immigration through an employer are very few and far between. In fact, I just had a consultation on Monday where someone from Belize came in with his employer, and the employer said, came in on a visitor visa, I want to do it the right way, right? And he was like, and I want to give them legal stats, tell me. And so I go through my spiel, and basically was like, there's no pathway. And he said, but they say to do it the right way. I'm trying to do it the right way. What do you mean there's no, and this is what it is, sir. There's no pathway. And so most of the conversations I have with employers is just that. There isn't a pathway where you can help.
So similar path of discussion. What should a business do if ICE comes?
Oh, there is what they can do and what they should do, legally versus what's happening in practice. I put a lot of pressure on employers. And so I had a consultation with an employer where his employee had a work permit and was working lawfully for him. And so ICE came to the place of employment, and he was like, they were so nice. They were so nice. And he has a work permit, so I didn't think anything of it. They asked if they could speak to him. So I said, yeah, sure. I didn't see any harm. Next thing I know, they took him into custody. And so, employers can say, no, I don't want you to enter my place of employment. But they're scared to do that. I had earlier this year, I had a client who he had an order of removal by an immigration court, and he had a motion to reopen pending. So he had an order of removal many years ago before he hired my firm. He's married to a U.S. citizen, and I had filed a motion to reopen. and that motion to reopen was pending. ICE wants to deport him, but they don't have the authority to enter into his home. And so they start this harassment campaign outside of his home on a loudspeaker. I know this because I'm on the phone with him. He was living in Jacksonville, and he's on the phone with me, and his wife is a U.S. citizen, and so she's like, you can't enter my home. He's not coming out, and we have a motion to reopen pending. All this thing, she's trying to talk to them, and they're yelling and screaming, and they are not leaving. They're there because they have quotas to meet, and they get financial incentives for every deportation. And so, and I'm speaking to the ICE officer. I'm like, I don't want you to hold off on his deportation forever. This motion to reopen is going to be maybe another couple of months, and the judge is going to make a decision. And if the judge denies it, he's all yours. But at least give him a chance. So just hold off for a little bit. And and so they're calling him on the phone. I'm on the phone with him or his wife. I don't know. I'm on speaker, and they have the ICE officer on speaker. The ICE officer said to him, "Your attorney said to come out. Your attorney said to come out right now." And I'm like, "No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that." Now they called the wife called the local news media. When the media showed up, ICE left, and then they came back. But what I'm saying is their harassment campaign is going to continue to the point where we negotiated where the fine is going to meet them at the airport and turn himself in and got sent back to India. A month later, his motion to reopen got granted. His motion to reopen got granted. So I contacted that same officer, and I said, his motion to reopen is now granted. He now has a court hearing coming up. How can we get him back in the country? Nothing. I haven't heard anything. There's no way for me to get him back. And so that's what I'm saying, when things like that happen. So what can employers do? Legally, they can say, I do not wish for you to enter my place of employment. But do you know how scary that is when you're staring down 5 officers in tactical gear looking at you, And so I would put that on any employer if they say, look, okay, you can come in. Because as a rational person, seeing what's happening on television to U.S. citizens, I could see them being fearful to say, no, you can't enter.
Couldn't agree more. I know that there are some businesses that are taking a hard stance, but it's a scary thing.
Yeah.
And you look at the consequences. There was one place that in Chicago that said, okay, come on in, and they came on in. Or you come in for lunch. I saw that they left,
And then
they came back and took the staff.
Yep.
Yes. So yeah. As an employer, what is the life of hiring workers?
Fines. So financially, there's a liability. You can be fined, and those numbers have certainly gone up. So the fines are higher these days. In the state of Florida, the law says if you hire more than 25 or more employees, you have to do E-Verify. And so you have to put their information into the immigration system to ensure that they're legally authorized to work. For everyone else, I have a staff of 18. I just need an I-9 and keep that I-9 on file for them. And so, so what we're seeing though is, immigration has different arms. You have immigration, customs, ICE, but you also have the employment labor arm of immigration, where officers can go to a place of business and say, I want to see your I-9 records, right? And so we're seeing certainly a higher number of that happening, where I want to see your I-9 records, which usually gives you a certain number of days to respond with your I-9 records. That goes into employment law a little bit. We don't usually handle those cases. I refer them out to a labor attorney. But yeah, we're seeing where they're showing up more and more to places of employment want to verify I-9 records for those places that are not doing E-Verify because they don't have to.
I know that there's an attempt, I think it's at the state level, to require all employers to do E-Verify.
Yes.
So yeah, something to continue to watch. Lindsay and Miller, correct me if I don't get all of this right.
I probably read it.
Why my eyes are back on. During the Biden administration, approximately 200,000 immigration cases were dismissed because DHS had filed the required notice to appear with a court by the time of the scheduled hearing. When did that change? And this is where I that is why decline.
Why is it declining?
Why is it declining? There we go.
Okay, could you say that? So why is dismissing of deportation case?
So the actual filing of the NTA by DHS, is that correct?
Yeah. 2,000 dismissed from the Biden administration.
Okay,
It seems to me that they are either declining or they're not being dismissed at all.
right.
Why is that?
Okay, good question. So, prosecutorial discretion. So in the past, under the Biden administration, under the Obama administration, if I had a client, let's say Jose, been here for 15 years, has US citizen children, they're healthy though. I say that because Jose has been here for over 10 years, he could apply for cancellation of deportation. But there are 4 things Jose must prove. He's been here for 10 years, he can prove that. He has no criminal history, person of good moral character, he can prove that. He has US citizen children, he can prove that. It's the last one that's most difficult to prove, and that's extreme and unusual hardship to the US citizen children. So they have to have a debilitating medical thing, you know, extreme autism, not just autism, but nonverbal and so on. And so if I have a client like Jose and his kids are healthy, if we go to trial, we're going to lose this trial because he doesn't meet the 4 elements for cancellation of removal. And so I may reach out to the government and say, government, look, he's not a high priority to you. You know, Jose has no criminal history. He's not a danger to society. You have higher priorities because under prior administration, deportation was prioritized, you know, criminal history, recent arrivees, prior negative immigration history, those were prioritized. And so for folks like Jose, he's been here for a long time. Eventually, when his kids are older, they can petition for him, but he just right now doesn't have a pathway. They would offer prosecutorial discretion and dismiss Jose's case. And so a lot of my cases didn't go to trial. We would file motions for requests for prosecutorial discretion and get their case dismissed. Also, so DHS had the ability to dismiss those NTAs, but also the judge did as well. There were case laws that allow judges in the management of their dockets, docket management, in the efficient management of my docket. You're not a high priority case for me, so I'm going to dismiss your case. They no longer have the ability to do that. So judges can't dismiss independently, and DHS are not dismissing any deportation. There's no prosecutorial discretion in it.
All right. So I'm going to go to the question that I know is burning a lot of people's minds, which is what can the average citizen do?
I thought about that long and hard because I knew, you know, everybody wants action items they want to do. We're a society of doers, and I love that because, you know, for me as an immigrant, I have a stake in this because I'm an immigrant. But folks who have been here for a long time, and you know, and when I see you all wanting to do something, it warms my heart, and I can't say thank you enough on behalf of my clients for wanting to do something. What you can do is very limited. And the reason why I say that, you know, I was talking to Kathy about, like, in the past we would do like citizenship drive where, you know, we would have folks come in and we help them apply for citizenship. The liability is so high these days that I would never put somebody in that position, a retired attorney, to help fill out a citizenship application. Because one of the main ways someone ends up in deportation proceedings is by filing for citizenship. So because of that, and immigration attorneys are being charged for filing frivolous applications, right? And so we have to be cautious in our filings. I was saying the other day when we met, if you have a 10% chance of winning something as an attorney, you may say, look, there's a 10% chance, but if you're willing to try, let's try. Well, now if I'm going to be charged for filing something that's frivolous, am I going to take that risk and file something that has a 10% chance? No, I'm not going to do that, right? And so because of that, I am not of the mindset that we should go out and help folks apply for things because you may be doing more harm than good. I do think that advocacy in the form of reaching out to local representatives, I think that's useful. I think op-eds and local media coverage is also useful. Education is useful. Advocating, the other day I was driving down Palm Beach and there were folks holding up these signs against ICE and so on. I love seeing our local community exercise our freedom of speech, right? And so something basic as exercising your freedom of speech and advocating on behalf of immigrants, I think is useful. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say that Pennsylvania, one of the things that we're doing is that collecting food. Families are afraid to come out of their homes. And so now we've set up a delivery system. Sorry. That so that we're bringing food.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to repeat that, in Pennsylvania, because people are afraid, and this is happening in other states as well, people are afraid to leave their homes. And so collecting food, collecting clothes, collecting things that then are delivered to these families so they don't have to leave their homes is something I know that is being done.
Yeah, and just that associate attorney we were telling you about, Emma, her dad he's a pastor. Nobody wants to show up to his congregation because they can't drive, they can't get there. So he's going around picking up folks and bringing them, and I was like, you gotta be careful because you can't, but offering transportation because folks can't drive, they can't get to places. Resources certainly helps, but there's only so much you can do. And I really want to be careful getting folks involved in doing things just because liability is so high these days. I definitely think that advocating to our congressmen and local state government officials is important.
So this is one that I know is burning in somebody's mind, one of my neighbor's minds. If ICE agents come into my neighborhood when my landscapers are there, and I bring them in, and I bring them into my house and protect them. There was a story I think just last week of the DoorDasher. Yes. A young couple brought their DoorDasher in and said, the warrants, they're not coming in the house. Is that a good thing to do? Is that how risky is that to do?
Legally, can you do that? Absolutely, legally, right? Because ICE doesn't have, and 99%, I want to say 100, but 99% of the time, ICE doesn't have a search warrant for a home. They have a warrant to arrest the person, a detainer, but they don't have a warrant to search or enter into a home. And so absolutely legally you have the right to do that. What I'm seeing though is if their pressure tactics get so high, any rational person gets afraid and scared, and just like the DoorDash lady that was crying as she said, I'm so sorry, man, but I can't keep doing this. They're outside my door and they're peeking in. And so I would say you're allowed to a certain extent because I think it's all case by case basis. If ICE is at your door, if you're afraid, I definitely don't think you should put yourself in danger in any way because they have immunity, right? And we saw a US citizen get shot in the face. So I certainly don't think you should put yourself in a position where you could be harmed because of this immunity. ICE is more likely to do things that they won't normally do because they're protected. So I definitely think that it's a case by case basis, but legally you absolutely have the right to take someone into your home.
Well, thank you. We hit the 1 o'clock.
Okay.
So can you stay for off stage? Well, just for a couple other questions. Excellent. Indera, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So we're back, and we have the real Indera Demine here with us, sitting in front of the bridge. Jump, Indera, please don't jump. This special lady is back again, and we have to thank you. Thank you for your bravery. Thank you for your knowledge, your energy, your commitment and dedication. And we're honored that you would be with us this evening to participate in the Q&A. We would like that if people have questions or observations or things you'd like clarity from, it'd be great. I see that Randy has her hand up, but since we can't see everybody on the camera, if you can use your Zoom, raise your Zoom hand. It's down there at the bottom where it says raise hand at the bottom of your screen. And Randy, we'll start with you, and if others have a question, and if you can't find raise hand, just send a chat, and we'll get to it. But again, Indera, thank you very much. Randy, you're on.
Absolutely.
Indera, I am a retired administrative and regulatory lawyer. Used to say I'm a recovering lawyer, but I still have my license, and I have been going to businesses where the employees and the customers are primarily Spanish speakers, and giving them their rights so they can post it on their workroom, but also telling them to give me a call if someone is being threatened. Not that I can do anything, but I could try. But my question to you is there a group of immigration lawyers who are willing to advise people like me who have law licenses, but not in immigration, on ways we can help?
Absolutely. Yes. I will say we in the Fort Myers area, we're a little separated from the bigger cities. So the bigger nonprofits are in the Miami, in the Orlando area. But a lot of them, like the American for Immigrant Justice, they expand to this area, to the Fort Myers area. So absolutely, if you send me your email, I can connect you with folks. And I think that part of, and there aren't a whole lot of immigration attorney in this area, but a part of, I think, our duty, especially for me and our associate attorney, is to offer whatever advice we can. And so we've last summer we did a church series where we went around to different churches and did these, like, just telling them about TPS and immigration process and so on. So absolutely, employers that want to get educated or volunteers that want to get educated can reach out to me. And my office would love to participate and help in any which way we can.
Great. Randy's in Jacksonville, and
Yes.
that's
Got it. Okay, good to know.
That ICE blocked entry into our two large private schools last week.
Oh my God.
Road. It was unbelievable. And they were just waiting for vans of roofers and lawn people to go by them. That was all.
Yeah.
There for.
Yeah. We are definitely seeing things that, I've just never seen before, and things I never thought would happen, And so I was telling my husband that what really brought me to America is this idea of the American dream. Like, you can achieve anything in America. And I really think as an immigrant, that's what America truly represents, is this beacon of hope, this place you can achieve anything, and this place where you feel like your human rights are protected. At least as a kid, that's what I always looked to America to be. And this is the first time where I'm like, this feels like more like a nightmare than a dream, where I'm questioning whether or not I feel like I belong, and I'm a naturalized citizen who's been here for 20 something years. So I could just imagine, just the atmosphere when you're an immigrant, especially an undocumented immigrant. But
great. Indera, you're so powerful. Thank you for sharing. Any other questions, observations? This is an opportunity to talk to a really special person.
Oh, Nancy.
Nancy, you're on.
Thank you. I had trouble hearing the program, so if I'm repeating anything that was already covered in there, I apologize.
That's okay. Sure.
I look forward to going on the website and actually hearing the whole conversation. But I had two things I wanted to ask. One is that I heard on the news tonight that there was a hearing today, like an 8-hour hearing about Alligator Alley and access to lawyers
Yes.
not having access. And I
Yes.
wondered if you wanted to comment on that. And
Yes, that's so funny you
the
mentioned
other
it.
thing I would
Yeah.
love to hear you talk about, and I heard a little bit of it on the end, but again, I couldn't really understand. There are groups of us now that are, we have a rally this coming Saturday on Palm Beach Avenue and Palm Beach and Marsh. And we did one a few weeks ago there, and we had an amazing response. The community came out very slowly, and then they joined us and they took signs and they filmed us doing our rally and they brought us water and they brought cake and they were just so happy to have us there. And it was so moving because, we do these rallies a lot, and that was the best rally. It wasn't the biggest rally at all, but it was the best rally we've ever had. So we're going back on Saturday, and unfortunately, it's supposed to be raining and cold. But the community, we told them we'd be back on Saturday, so we want to show up. But we also, through this group that's been doing rallies, we do collections for families in Immokalee who we've got a couple of kids that are living on their own now because their mom was one of the tomato pickers that was sent out. So we collect money to pay their rent for the 18 and 16-year-old who are living alone now. And their phone bill, and they just had a huge water bill because they had their toilet leaking. And we collect food, and we give the guidance counselor at the high school. She provides snacks for the kids who stay after school, and so we're supporting that. But again, the Blue Gators are doing such a great job in their communities out in Bonita. But those of us in Fort Myers, we're still sort of struggling a little bit about how we could do a better job. So any comments you have on that would really be appreciated.
Absolutely. Nancy, thank you for all of that you've done and your group has done. That's amazing. And that was a special rally. I unfortunately I couldn't participate, but I saw it and I felt just proud of our community in our little Fort Myers area. Great turnout, great energy. I mean, you could feel it, and everything that you've done for the immigrant community, greatly appreciated. But I also have that feeling of doesn't there. We need a organized body or to get a little bit more organized because as I'm driving by at that rally, I'm going to take my kid to hockey practice. And I think, I wish I knew this. I would love to be here. I wish my office knew about this. We represent the immigrant community. I would have loved to have been there. And so I do want our immigrant community, and that includes practitioner immigrants, community organizers, to sort of get a little bit more organized. And, I get reached out from different places, from, Bonita Springs, a church in Bonita Springs, here in Fort Myers, a lot of churches actually. But to figure out a way of sort of sharing all of our contacts in the immigrant community, I think would be wonderful. Also, the Lee County Bar Association that I'm a member of has an immigration practice section where immigration attorneys are part of that practice section. So I think that if there's a way to connect nonprofits in the area, even if that's just adding or reaching out to me and saying, here are, our group or our contact information, and I can bridge that gap, that would be great. I don't mind doing that as best as I can, because I also have that feeling of, not knowing everything that's going on, and being a little bit more organized in that way would be great. As far as the lawsuit that you spoke about, it was Americans for Immigrant Justice that brought the suit, and they actually reached out to us because our firm is within walking distance of the district court, and they said, we're going to be there at 2:00, and we're probably going to be there until 10 p.m. Can we use the conference room? And at 5 o'clock, as we were getting ready to leave, they still weren't done with arguments yet. And they said it's going to be another couple of hours at the district court. That's all the feedback I got from the last time I spoke to them. So I'm not sure how it all went, but exciting time. And basically, what that suit is saying that there's limited access to legal counsel in Alligator Alcatraz. This morning, which is funny because I haven't done a in-person jail visit. I don't think that is even possible at Alligator Alcatraz. They do allow you to do remote video call with clients. And this morning I actually had 2 phone calls with clients, Zoom calls. So there is some access, but that's specifically what that lawsuit was against is a lack of access to legal counsel.
Great. Thank you, Indira. Thanks, Nancy. I want to add our specialist, Bob Schaefer, back into this and ask a question of both of you from a more global perspective. Since you did the program that we showed tonight way back a week ago, there's been another murder. There's been a lot more media attention on a national basis. I'd love to hear from each of you in terms of your perspectives about the visibility of these horrendous, cruel actions. And you've said, Indira, that Florida is less visible than many of the other states are, while we still have great marches and groups getting together to try to do some things. We clearly aren't the same. But could each of you maybe comment a little bit from a more global national perspective of where you see this going? Is there light in the tunnel that you can share with us? Bob, you want to go first, and then Indira? You're muted, Bob. You're muted.
Unmute.
I was going to defer to Indira because she's an expert on immigration. I would fill in.
Okay. We'll let Indira go first, but we'd love to get a global from each of you.
Yes, Bob. I'd love to hear your perspective. I think that it feels to me like the tip of the iceberg in a way. It feels as if we and because I'm not just seeing what's happening on television and the videos, but on the legislative side and the reversal of immigration programs, from January 2025 to present day, we've seen what immigrants can qualify for bonds. That has changed significantly. We've seen prosecutorial discretion go away, temporary protective status go away, humanitarian parole go away. So on a legislative side, we see just this move to limit, obviously, undocumented immigrants, but legal immigration as well, right? And so there's this feeling of don't belong here, and I feel it, and as a naturalized citizen. So I think that on a national scale, that's the feeling. That's the general feeling. Naturalized or not, whether you're legal or not, it feels irrelevant these days. What feels relevant is, do you look like an immigrant? If so, be prepared to be harassed, and I've had this conversation with siblings of mine. I have 2 brothers, and they're in the New York, New Jersey area. My dad is here in Florida, and I tell my dad, if you're stopped by the police, you don't want to argue, because I've seen videos after videos after videos of people saying, I'm an American, I just look at my paper, I'm American, and they'll beat you up first and then ask questions later. And so I don't think that we'll see a light at the end of the tunnel, unless I really don't. It's the first time I've really felt this in my career. This even under the first Trump administration, there were many changes when it came to immigration, but there still was a feeling of hope. We got this. This time feels different, to be honest. This feels different to me.
Wow.
And I don't mean to be so sad and morbid. I'm sorry.
No, we appreciate your honesty. We need to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think what we've seen since the most recent murder is the beginnings of what looks like a sea change. Public opinion now has a majority saying that the Trump immigration policies go too far. We're seeing on Capitol Hill, even among pretty hardcore Trump supporters, people asking questions and expressing their doubts. The senator from North Carolina, Tom Timmons, who is not running for re-election, has been very outspoken that the policy is insane and that senior people need to be eliminated. Trump has even taken a less confrontational position. There is an opportunity right now, and why I started off my presentation with a focus on Congress, to push back and possibly gain majorities in the House and Senate to begin reining in Trump. The reality is Trump is going to be president for the next several years, barring the unforeseen, and he will continue to bang this drum. How effective he is depends on whether his acolyte supporters in Congress continue to stand with them. And the more they hear from constituents that this policy is un-American and unacceptable, the less likely they'll support him and the less egregious those policies will be. As for, what Indera says, I'm a white guy born in the United States. My son is adopted from Colombia. We talk to him all the time about need to be careful. He's an American citizen now, but he is dark complexioned, and he's been stopped for driving while brown. It is a frightening time for people whose loved ones and whose families are under this incredibly racist gun, and we need to push back in any way we can. But ultimately, in the system that we have now, it's going to be public pressure on public officials, on our elected representatives, who can stop the insanity in Washington and in Tallahassee.
Thank you, Bob.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Indera, I'm very concerned about you. And I've known you, haven't kept up with you all through the past 8 years, but
Yeah.
but I'm so glad that you continued and with your profession. You were pretty new at the time that we met, as I recall. But I am concerned about you, and I do hope that you'll continue with your job because it is so important. And I think we all want you to know that we recognize the value of your work, even though you probably feel like you're butting your head against the wall every day.
Right.
And you have a family to be concerned about. We just want you to know that we appreciate your work, and
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
This year, for the first time, I had a conversation with my husband where I said, we need to look at other options. Should we leave the United States? And I've never had that thought before. But to me, I want to be able to speak freely, and I really am afraid that right is going away. For example, with the sale of, I will make videos on social media, and they have quite a bit of following. Other immigrants will look at it and share the video and so on. They're all things about here's the latest immigration change, and this is what's going on. Since that sale of TikTok went through, accounts are being shadow banned. And so instantly we saw that happening, right? And so I just feel like there's a closing in on being able to also spread information. I think about the fact that our office is downtown and very visible. It says Immigration Law Firm on top. And so if I'm an ICE agent, where would I go, right? And so that's something, a constant fear. I just think that the things have really shifted very quickly within the last year, and just has progressively felt just more and more aggressive, if it could get even more aggressive. And the numbers are correct. We have here in Fort Myers and Naples some of the highest enforcement numbers, right? And so from everywhere, I've had clients within the last year be picked up from home, from being in a vehicle, not driving, from going to court, just from all these different places. So it's just hard to remain positive. But I do think that access to counsel is important, and so we continue to take those cases. I think it's just hard when you keep losing. When you go into law, you don't go into keep losing, and it's very disheartening to not catch a break. And yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Well,
But you think, what's the option? The option is to do nothing,
Right.
We're trained. You have all this experience, all this training. All this
I
knowledge.
know. No, I just hope, like, I don't know. I just have this, but it's the anxiety that comes from the job, where
Right.
of I hope something doesn't happen, of like constantly.
and the unknowns of tomorrow. And I know, working with nurses all through the height of the COVID period and the PTSD that they were experiencing and wondering, and other, not just nurses, but all the medical professionals, and having to put on these special clothes and entering each room, and
Right.
if they were bringing something home and taking their clothes off before they went into the house so they didn't infect any of their family members, and the pressures from that. And you're living that kind of life every day. And I think about one of our very closest friends saying, African American, saying to us some years ago, "Now you know how we have felt all of our lives."
Yes.
It was a very powerful
Yes.
comment,
Absolutely.
very real. And we now, as a society, are looking at these things and we're saying, this isn't America as we thought it was. We know that there's always been an undercurrent of hate, of control, of power, of fear of losing power, and a desire for white supremacy, et cetera, that's always been an undercurrent, but it's out of the closet now, and it's become very concerning and very fearful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I know it's easy for me to tell you to keep going. That's easy. And I do respect your decision, whatever your decision is. I know you have a family to be concerned about, and we hope for your safety. We do want your safety.
Yeah, and I really truly believe in the power of the universe just telling you exactly what you should do. And so I've sort of put that out there, just whatever it's meant to be will be. But it's the first time where I thought, I am not a native Spanish speaker. And so I've been trying to sell this to my husband. We go somewhere for 3 years that Spanish speaking country. We all four of us, the kids, we learn Spanish. We come back after this madness is over. But he's of the same mindset that you can't jump ship right now. But I've ran into another immigration attorney, where she's said, I'm no longer taking detained cases. I'm sort of transitioning to wills, trust, and estate law. And I thought, wait, should I be doing something like that? Because they are also taking away so many streams of legal immigration. Bond hearings are gone. This is gone. So just, it's a lot this particular year. But, I do believe the universe will tell me if I need to, take a break, hopefully I know. So.
Well, a powerful program, a powerful evening. Bob kicked us off by sharing some of the most horrendous, make absolutely no sense bills that are going on in Tallahassee that have not died at this point, that are very much alive. And we'll be getting out communication on that so that you can reach out. But it's time sensitive. The very first item that Bob shared with us over the next couple of days to reach out to, even though they could care less, but to reach out to their staff and leave phone messages for our 2 U.S. senators as the Senate debates the funding for ICE and the 4 criteria or 5 criteria that Bob pointed out that need to be met. We'll get that information out to everybody and also encourage people to realize that your voices do make a difference. As Bob has shared, he's lived his life giving this advice and trying to keep people's spirits up when you see terrible, horrendous things like this. And when you see terrible things that are happening to somebody as special as Indera, we need to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll follow what your heart tells you needs to happen. And I think all of us are going through that kind of assessment when you see some of the greatest researchers on the history of the loss of democracy leaving this country so that they can continue to write and have their voices and not feel like they're going to get locked up the next day. That should be a signal. I'll close with this comment that I had the opportunity earlier this week to speak on Holocaust Remembrance Day. And I did a little crosswalk between the 1930s and what's happening today to the audience. And I got a lot of really sad but positive feedback and a realization from a number of the folks that they hadn't thought that much about the fact of what we are seeing right now in this country is an echo in a different shape, in a different fashion, in a different pattern. But the fundamental issues of the increase of fear, the increase of control and power, and the speed of change going on as people were saying, well, I'll just protect myself and try to keep a low profile. So we'll all hang in there together. We're honored to have everybody this evening. Anybody else for the good of the cause before we say thank you to our special guest speakers tonight?
Jim?
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you again to Indera. Indera, you have
thank you.
all my respect. Thank you for what you've done for the league. Also, we were so lucky to have met you 6 years ago and hear your thoughts and anything we can do for you. Seriously,
Just
anything
hope
we can
that
do. You have this wonderful group of very smart people who have a lot of network and connections out there all over the country. And anything that we can do to help you, your organization, you can count on us. Definitely.
I appreciate that. Thank you guys so much. So, I appreciate all of you and all of your kind words. It really just thank you so much for the kindness you showed to the immigrant community. Like I said, I am an immigrant, so I know why I'm connected to the cause. But whenever I see folks just stand up for human rights, I really appreciate that. So thank you for having me on.
And thanks to all our FFD followers. Keep the spirits up. We've got a bunch of communications coming out over the next 10 days. So we'll inundate your emails, but I hope you find the information to be of value and usable as we always try to take our educational programs and turn them into actions that you as individuals can take or collectively you can do with others. Our voice is important. We cannot be silent. We cannot be complacent. Thank you. Thank you. You have a great night, everybody.
Put your boys to bed.
Stay warm. Stay warm.